What's up, everyone? I'm back with another episode of the Keep Going podcast. Today, my guest's name is Gordon Chandler. He's a mortgage lender here in Oklahoma, and we'll be talking life, business, fatherhood, marriage, and how you have to dig deep to work through those hard moments. I think you'll enjoy the conversation. Thank you for listening. As always, keep going. But yeah, so you said what? Like maybe start saying that?
Yeah, because I've heard you say that for
like 5 years,
you know, and you posted it, but I was curious, like, what's the story behind that?
It's so simple. So that's what makes me laugh is, you know how one of my biggest real estate inspirations has been Tez, because we grew up together and he was the first person to tell me, like, hey, by the way, you should try this insurance out, you know? And then I go to insurance and he's like, hey, actually, we're going to sell houses. It's better. So I went to that. And when you're first starting in real estate, really anything, but when real estate, it's almost like, I was lucky enough to get spoiled a little bit once I quit like the new home sales. But when I was in new home sales, it's kind of a slow game to start. So, you know, there's 6 months of like trying to get a closing.
Yeah.
And me and him were so close, and when I was at Home Creations and he was at Roush, we would kind of call each other to just talk about what we're going through. I'm really thankful to him because it was more me getting value from him, and maybe him getting it from me asking the right questions. But I'd be like, man, this lead came through and then they ghosted me, or they thought I was cool and then they stopped talking to me, or I almost had them and then they just left. So I would work through all these things with him, but at the end of every call, we were like, all right, bro, keep going. And that was it, was just keep going. Yeah, just keep going. But then when he came to me in 2019 and I quit my job to start wholesaling with him, it just became like an identity.
Yeah.
Like he has it tattooed on his leg. I have it tattooed on my leg.
So that's not a thing. Like that was y'all's thing. It's not like,
yeah.
You know,
like, yeah, keep going is obviously like not something we trademark. Like that's obvious.
Well, yeah.
100,000 million people, whatever you want to say it. But for me and him, it was something between us before I started hashtagging it on my social media. And the funny part now is like, people will tell me that. They'll see me and they're like, yep, keep going. But it started out as just motivation for me and him. So we would say it to each other.
Yeah.
Or he's had a lot of success, and me too, but he's had a lot of success, but I've known him so long that I always want to tell him like he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
Because once you get into the grind, you're just in it, you know? You're just like in the mix. So I always like, that's what I do for him, I think, is I'll stop him sometimes and be like, hey man, you're doing a great job. Or, hey, keep going. Or something else we say is, it's only the beginning. Yeah. Like, he just had that huge event that we were at, which I thought was awesome, the OKC Evolve.
Yeah.
But after he was done and he was done talking and we're talking in the back, I was like, man, it's just the beginning. But we've said that every time. So keep going is just something that obviously keeps us going and keeps us on track. But we've balanced it over the years to still like stop and smell the flowers, also see what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
So we try not to view it, well, I'm speaking like on both of them, but I try to view it as not like yesterday is nothing, we're moving forward. I look at it as like a buildup of accomplishments, like a pile of trophies. Like, oh, keep going, we're continuing, we're doing good, you're serving people, you're being nice, you're creating relationships. And it just means a lot to me now.
And even if you're killing it, like, you know, some people have a bar that they set, and when they reach that, it's like, well, now what? Mm-hmm. But if you always have the mindset of like, I want to keep going, it's like, you won't be content. Yeah. There's always something more to do.
Yeah.
And when you said that, like, you know, maybe if he was on top of his game or whatnot, but you'd still say that to him, like, even when you're successful, you still have crap days.
Yeah.
Where, you know, stuff falls apart, whether it's business or life or whatnot. So I think it's not just you that was always needing to hear that. I'm sure, you know, he's going through stuff or, you know, could get in his head about something, but he'd still need to hear that from you as well to be like, all right, man, I still got this.
Yeah, it's funny because even now on the phone, it'll just be natural at the end. Like, all right, bro, keep going. I'll talk to you later. Like, it's not something we think to say at the end. Like, hey, by the way, keep going.
Yeah.
It's like natural.
Yeah.
And I sometimes I tend to say like, oh, I suck at this or I'm not good at this, but that's not the truth. I feel like my focus just goes to places I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So like hashtags I'm not that interested in, but I put keep going on everything because it means something to me. And then people come up to me and say it. And friends will, I stopped at a pool hall yesterday to get something notarized. My mom's a notary, so I went over there to get some stuff checked out. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy I used to play basketball with, and I haven't seen him in forever. He's like, hey, man, oh, you've been killing it. Great job, man. You're really doing it. And it just made me so happy that I don't ever talk to this guy. Even though I have great feelings towards him. I don't even remember his name. We just used to play basketball for like 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those connections, but they see it. And it's not something I push that hard. So I feel like it's just something that sticks to people. Because like you said, even when you're successful, you want to hear it to keep going. But especially in the dark times, because like no rain, no flowers, you're not going to be sunshine all the time. But it's just something that means a lot to me. And whether it's personal or business or whatever, I think it just applies. Yeah. So it just means a lot.
That's cool. Like I've always wondered, like, you know, what's the story behind that? Mm-hmm. You know, where did that come from?
It's just personal, I guess. We started talking about it, and now my wife put it on my wedding ring. So it's in there on the inside, if you look in there.
That's cool. Because especially in marriage. Yeah. Marriage is not always easy.
No, hills and valleys.
There's times where you're like, man, this is rough.
Yeah.
But, I think that's a cool reminder, like, whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. But especially to have inside your ring of being like, you know what? Life's not always easy, but keep going. Mm-hmm. Just keep going.
I've been way happier since I adopted that mindset of keep going while still being balanced. Mm-hmm. I've just gotten happier and happier. Because something I talk with a lot of people when they ask me like, what do I do to, I don't know. I don't even like when someone are like, what do you do to be successful? But what do you do to, keep going? I always think that being content with how much you accomplish per day and being happy with the moments, like when I see you with your girls and things like that, you just got to take life as it is. So the other day I come up here and I was trying to work, but then I ended up talking with my broker, Brett, at Copper Creek for an hour.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm thankful for that. Yeah, I could have made calls, but I'm thankful for that. You don't know when you'll get that back. So last night when I went to that pool hall to meet my mom, one of her friends was there, and he's in his 60s, but he's, an actual good pool player. And I've been getting into pool for the last year or so. And I could have just zoomed off, but I played 4 or 5 games with him. I may not get those. So I've just been trying to take life in stride on that because I get in a rush.
I do that.
I get in a rush. So I don't know, man. I'm a young man figuring it out.
Yeah.
But I'm happy. So it doesn't mean I don't deal with like the stress that a man carries or the behind feeling that people feel where they just don't feel like they're hitting well, even if you're hitting your goals, you always feel like there's something else or the comparison mentality and things. But last year, I just changed a lot of mindset.
Well, I think I feel like, and we've talked about this before, I feel like I and a lot of people probably underestimate the importance of mindset. Mm-hmm. And how much that really changes, like, it doesn't always change the outcome, but it changes your time in this event of dealing with the stress of if you know that you're never going to quit and you can figure it out and, the cards are going to fall how they fall, but at least I'm going to keep showing up and I'm going to give it my best. That's very different from I can't do this or I've got to quit. Like, kind of like what you said, there's no no flowers without the rain. Like, there's been times in my business where I've just hoped for things to be easier. I'm like, man, I just wish I could have like an easy day, like a slam dunk.
Yeah.
I'm tired of having all these problems and complications and delays and stuff like that. But in hindsight, I'm almost always grateful for those struggles because it stretched me and it made me better. So it's like it's not fun in the moment, but if you have that mindset of like, I'm still going to push through this, then you always come out on the other side sharper, faster.
Yeah.
You've learned something that you didn't know before, and now the next time you encounter that or something similar, then it's easier. So like, whenever we moved here to Oklahoma, we had a lot of change all at once. So
I was originally from Austin.
yeah, because I grew up in Austin, and I was raised there from before kindergarten until we moved here in 2015.
What?
So I was a firefighter there for about 4 years,
Wow.
and I was looking for a change, and we had some family here in the mortgage industry. And so they said, come up, shadow someone.
It's crazy
check
how
it
you
out.
get those blessings where
Yeah.
someone's like, hey, you should try this.
Yeah.
And you could just move on.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, whatever. But it's the same thing that happened to me. Someone's like, hey, you should try to sell a house. And we're like, okay, I'll get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Especially for you moving states.
Yeah.
And
So-
with you already had kids, or you just had you and your wife at the time?
So we had our oldest at that time.
Wow.
My
That's
wife
pressure.
I don't know if she was pregnant when we were starting to think about moving, or, if she got pregnant, shortly after. But we moved to Oklahoma, and I'd never been here before we came to visit. So we moved to Oklahoma. I changed careers. I bought a house. We had our second daughter
Wow.
all within like 9 months or so of moving here. I mean, so that was a lot.
That is
and it
a
was
lot.
it was stressful.
Especially
But
in a sales job.
yeah. But after that, it was like, man, life's easy. It's all downhill after this, knowing that, if you can get through a lot and not let it break you, of keep going, or, just you don't quit, you figure out a way to make it work, then I really feel like you're still going to have other challenges and stuff like that, but you know that you can get through stuff.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Like when I was training for my marathon, one of the things that I had to think a lot about was, I wouldn't think about running the whole race.
Okay.
I'd think about these little increments of, I just need to get to this next mile. Okay. And then after that, it's like, well, I just
26 times.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, it wasn't always a 1 mile, but it's like, okay, like normally whenever I trained, the shortest distance that I would do was 6 miles.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I'm used to running that. Let me run that. I got that done.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, I'm almost halfway through a half marathon. So let me get to the 13.1. Okay, well, I'll do another 6. And then, I've just got a little bit more. So, and then I break that down on even a smaller level, like towards the end of the race, whenever I was hurting a lot. And I was like, man, this sucks. Like my whole body hurts. It's like, okay, just get to that stop sign.
Yeah.
And then I get to that stop sign and I was like, okay, just go to that tree and then go to that building. And then, it's like just little things like that where I've done that, outside of running or working out. It's like,
It's definitely an analogy for life, for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah,
Just get around that next bit. My wife and I, we work out in various ways, but sometimes we'll be riding bikes through the neighborhood or something like that, or working out and doing cardio stuff or stretch, like yoga, like, what is it, static stretching or something, where you're kind of staying in a position for a while and
Okay.
things. And we'll say, oh, it's 15 minutes. And then we'll just start goofing. And it's like, well, that's only 1 minutes. Oh, that's only 30 seconds. Like you start being goofy, but it actually does help you get through it.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at a marathon, and that's why they say life's a marathon with it, because you can't just think you're going to blitz through it.
Mhm.
It takes a combination of so many things, whether it's your actions or the people you meet or the setbacks or the blessings that come, because you've definitely had to get some blessings to get where you are.
Yeah.
Plus your hard work, plus some learning curves. So it's interesting. I think we can fall into being too hard on ourselves. And that's from my personal opinion. I think I'm too hard on myself sometimes. But then someone, whether it's you and we have a great relationship, so your words mean a lot, or the random person that I don't know and they say something sweet and I'm like, man, that's nice. That is actually, because like for the longest, even now sometimes I'll freeze, but I'm like kind of shy about compliments. But since I changed my mindset, they've been little pieces of God or little pieces of the universe just talking to you. Even if you meet someone random and they just say something sweet to you in passing.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to Shaq the other day, you know Shakir, and he was saying that people come into your life and some it's for long periods of time or some it's just for that one moment. So I think of that with you a lot because when I was first starting at Home Creations, you were the first lender I built a relationship with. You literally helped me buy my house. You helped my cousin buy her house. You've helped numerous clients we could look back over the years, but you still continue to provide value to me even if we're not working a deal. So it's just cool to build those relationships. And today I was at an inspection for a client. It's a referral that's buying a house. And the inspector, I have such a good relationship with him, his name's Dustin, that I text him, hey, here at this time, is that cool? And he's like, yeah. And I feel the same way with you. And pretty much anyone I actually build a relationship with, it's just that easy point of contact. And it just makes it so much better. Hey, Gordon, I got this new lead. Can you call him just real quick? I think it's going to be a tag team effort. And I didn't know how important that was to me.
Yeah.
And it's such a benefit in this industry.
Well, and so one thing about that where I think that for the most part, it's not that hard to like just pick up the phone and call someone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's times where I'm busy and, you know, I might be in an appointment with someone or I might be, you know, on the other line or whatever the case may be. But I know whether it's a customer or like a referral partner, so a builder or realtor, time for us is key.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always tried to jump on those opportunities because I know there's times where I couldn't. And it's like, you know, if you can't call for 15 or 20 minutes, there's many times where I've reached out and they're like, sorry, I've already got someone who can take care of me. So,
and they may not even be able to do as good a job as you.
Yeah.
But it's whoever gets to it the fastest sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes it is.
That happens to me.
You know, I love being that first person, but, you know, sometimes I can't do it right then. So that's one thing that can be kind of challenging about this industry is like, I always feel that sense of pressure of like, I've got to get this stuff taken care of quickly and kind of prioritizing like, do I need to return this phone call or that email or lock in this interest rate or do that pre-qual first? Like everybody needs something right now.
Do you get like overwhelmed or are you good at staying pretty focused as far as delegating what you need to do next?
I've gotten better at that. I mean, it's something that doesn't come naturally to everybody, but like back whenever I was a firefighter, a lot of what we would do is like you try to take the emotion out of stuff to focus on your job.
Okay.
And you did a bunch of triage then. Like so if we went to a medical call, you know, it's like you got to check their airway, breathing and circulation first. Nothing matters aside from those three things first.
Okay.
So if they're bleeding out, I'm checking their airway to make sure that they can even breathe. And then are they breathing? And then, you know, so it's like you kind of go down these checklists of what is most important. So in work, whenever I get busy, you know, obviously it's not life and death, but you still kind of prioritize like, I have all these things that are urgent, but what truly is more urgent? Like someone's emergency to them in the grand scheme of things isn't that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you don't always say that to them, but it's like, yeah, you know, you want everybody to feel, you know, valued and that you care about what they're going through and you respect their sense of urgency. But I feel like in a way I've kind of triaged the things that I need to do. And also like whenever I got an assistant, it was then trying to figure out what are the things that I need to do and what are the things that my team can do. And so one thing that I thought was really cool with, you know, as you're looking at growing a business or growing your team and things like that is putting a dollar value to like every task that you do. Okay. So if it's like responding to an email, answering a question, like if you just kind of sit down and think about all the things that you do throughout the day, when you think about, you've got to consider like how much income you want to make per year, and then divide that into a monthly number, into an hourly number, and also to the minute number. And so whatever these tasks that I've got to do, I would kind of assign a dollar value to that of like, is this something that's super important from a value perspective? And if it's not something that was really going to move the needle, or if I wouldn't pay someone else my hourly rate to do that task, then I shouldn't be doing it. So for example, like if I've gotten a customer taken care of, or I've got a closed customer and they have a simple question about, hey, can you send me another copy of some of the documents that I signed, or something like that. And then I've got another customer that's like, hey, I've just filled out my application, I want to get pre-qualified. Well, part of it's what is closed business versus new business that that needs my attention. But another part of it is it, can I delegate and sending a copy of a document to someone else? Like, do I need to be doing that, or do I need to be focused on getting someone qualified to buy a new home? And so, I think delegating things kind of took me a while to figure out, because I just wanted to get things done. I'd want to cross things off of my checklist, especially if they were easy or quick. But it took me a while to get to the point where it's like, this is something that my team can help me with, and this is this other thing over here is something that like I actually need to be doing, or that's a better use of my time.
Is that because I'm really interested in this, because I've definitely went through those and heard other people say similar things as far as backtracking, because that's like KPIs and things.
Yeah.
But to hear how you're looking at it as a dollar amount, is that something you're doing on the fly, or do you take time in the morning when you're starting your day or the day before to be like, here's my list of my stuff and here's the list of the assistant stuff, and they get a list? Or is it, hey, take care of this, and you're just kind of doing it at random?
Well, I think some of it you got to figure out as it comes to you, but
Yeah.
I think like as you're setting up your process, it's kind of like you've got to figure out, like some of this stuff you've just got to figure out and make a system of like, hey, if it's these types of things over here, this is what I'm going to handle. If it's these other things over here that I don't need to be doing, like if I could focus on bringing bringing business in,
like sending a fully closed downloaded document, that's something assistant can do, and you can just send them an email.
Yeah.
Hey, send this when you get a chance.
Yeah. So there was this exercise that we went through that was, I think the task was to think of everything that you do in a day, like write it out on a sheet of paper, which is kind of interesting to think about. Like, what do I do? I do a lot.
Yeah.
So it was a long list, but I thought it was, as far as, so anyway, you make this list of everything that you do, and then you figure out like, how much is this going to move the needle in terms of bringing business in and making the company or myself or my team money.
Okay.
And then you just gotta kind of prioritize what are the things that are worth, what makes sense for me to do, and what makes sense for my team to do.
Okay. Because sometimes I feel like I find myself having very efficient days, and then other times I find myself like, dang, I was busy, but I don't feel like I did anything.
Yeah.
So that's where maybe I'm falling short on delegating correctly, because if I delegate correctly, then all my tasks are moving the needle, to where these daily things, these 1 to 3 business day type tasks, can be not pushed off, but delegated to the right source.
Yeah.
That's something I've talked to so many people about, but I'm really interested in how you created that system. So you're writing everything out. You get your day of what you do. And then you're just categorizing them for yourself?
Yeah, you're just kind of, so, and obviously you're going to have flexibility in that. So like right now, my assistant, she went home early yesterday because she wasn't feeling good. And so, I don't want to be so rigid in this process or this system to where it's like, well, she doesn't feel good, but she's still going to get this stuff done. Or it's not at all saying like certain things are beneath you. I think some people kind of have that mentality when you're delegating. It's like, well, I'm too good to be doing these things. It's not about that at all, but it's like, what makes sense for our team dynamic for me to do versus people helping me do.
And if it's an emergency, you're going to take care of it.
Yeah,
yourself.
obviously. You know, or if she's out, then it's like, okay, well, I'll cover, what things do I need to help her do to, make sure everything's still done. But I think one of the things that can really make a difference in how effective you are in growing your business is just being really mindful of like, what are the things that you need to do? And also, the things that move the needle. So you probably heard the saying, because it's common in a lot of things, like, 20%, let's just say within an organization, like 20% of the people are bringing in 80% of the business.
Yeah.
Well, also probably like 20% of the tasks that you do are moving the needle 80%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, there's a lot of things that I do, but if I focused on, say, for me, like as a loan officer, what are the things that I do that bring in business? It would be building relationships, being out of my office and actually, connecting with realtors, connecting with builders, doing loan applications and stuff like that. Answering emails and making copies and things like that aren't bringing in new volume. Now, it's stuff that needs to be done, but it's like, I think you've just got to kind of think about what are the things that are going to make money.
Yeah.
And I need to focus on those things.
Yeah.
And then have other people focus on the things that aren't moving the needle as much. So if I could, in a perfect world, if I could only focus on that 20% of tasks that make 80% of the business,
You're going to grow away
you're
fast.
going to grow.
Yeah.
But I think you can be stagnant when you're trying to do everything. You're like, maybe you're focusing on the 80% of stuff that only moves the needle 20%. That's not helping you. So when you get to the point where it's like, I'm only going to do these high payoff activities, and then I'll have other people that will help me do this other stuff. The more that you focus on that, the more business that you get. The more revenue you have, the more that you can, hire a team or let, other people, do things for you that need to be done.
Yeah.
But it's like, I can focus on what I need to focus on. So,
That's true. Use the best, your best skills for that.
Yeah.
Because you could definitely do the other things, but these things you've perfected your craft on are what actually move. So like for me, closing the deals is something I'm skilled at. It doesn't mean I need to necessarily do all 18 steps prior.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, I don't remember what month it was, but it was earlier in this year. I want to say maybe like February or so. The VP of Ops for our company, she had done this Darren Harding training program called Insane Productivity.
Okay.
And so that's where all this kind of came from. So there's like a course that you can do, and he's got a book. I mean, he's got a bunch of information that he goes over because he's basically like a life coach and a business coach.
Okay.
And so he'll, in this seminar specifically, it's like focusing on different things that can make you very productive.
Okay.
And the thing that really hit home for me was he was saying, these CEOs of the biggest companies in the world have just as much time in the day as you and me. But how are they doing what they do and making the money that they're making and having the success and the impact that they are?
Yeah.
It's like this type of stuff. They're not trying to do it all. They're focusing on, the things that are moving the needle most and having the most impact for whatever they're trying to do, and then hiring out other people to help with that. And so it's finding that balance of like say in real estate, there's certain lending teams, for example, where there's a loan officer, but the customer never meets that person, or they may like talk to them once and then they get passed along the assembly line of everybody else that helps them get the customer to the closing table. So I think it's finding a balance of, you never want your customer to feel that they're part of an assembly line. You still want to have good service and that kind of personal connection with them, but also just know that for me to be as effective as I want to be, there's going to be a lot of things in their loan process that I'm not going to do. Like, I don't need to do. I fully trust my team to help with those things, and I want to focus on helping more people, and developing more relationships and things like that, which will, lead to more closings.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really cool going through that program, and it's kind of a continual thing because it doesn't come natural to everybody. You want to try to, you get distracted with things, you kind of fall back into the habits that you've had your whole life. So it really is kind of relearning, your mindset of how you should grow your business and the things that you should be doing, and trying to stay focused. So definitely not perfect at it, but I thought that was like a really, really impactful program to go through
Yeah.
to help me change my mindset of like, what should I be focusing on to grow my business?
Yeah. No, 100%. I think everyone goes through that, and the best ones or the most productive ones do it at a high level. And that's something I still work on, is trying to get better at the delegation tactic, because sometimes I see myself just trying to do too much.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely working on my balance, but I look at people like yourself or other folks I talk to, and that's a common theme. We're like, no, I have this list of people for these things because I shouldn't be worrying about posting to social media, or I shouldn't be worried about making sure, all my documents are in order. I'm already the one that's doing all the mental work, the actual closing. Because, yeah, when you get to the closed part of the deal, that's when everyone gets paid, they get a house, everyone's happy. But there's all these closes along the way that you're working on. From my perspective, if it's on the off-market side, I'm having to make sure and close the numbers to make sure this is a workable deal, then close the seller on getting the property. Or if I'm on the realtor side and it's listing or buying, I have to close them every step of the way. Oh, we're past inspection. Oh, we're past appraisal. So I think it's interesting to think about, because it is tangible, because that's how we get paid. So there's definitely a marker or something, you would say, that shows what we're doing, but it's one of those intangibles almost.
Yeah.
Because the stuff we do, I was talking to my, it's crazy to say, my brother-in-law. It's my first time saying it, so it's interesting to me. I love it.
Yeah.
But I was talking to him, and he was saying that with, that working through things, it's not the 15 minutes it takes me to do something. It's, all the time you put in to be prepared to do that.
Yeah.
And you see it a lot on social media and YouTube, whatever. But that's with you. And that's why me and you have a good relationship. I can call you and say, hey, I've got a new lead. And me and you can almost get them way down the line in the process in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Where back in the day, I was scared to just talk to people.
Yeah.
So I think it's so interesting, that intangible part, because obviously it comes with results, but it's interesting that we are that skilled at it.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize all the steps you're doing. Something I like to look at is people that do cold calls, whether it's investing or realtor stuff, whatever it is like finding that balance of moving very quickly through the phone call efficiently, but not rushing them and not wasting time. Because I can't lie, there were plenty of times I was on a call and it was an hour. I'm like, dang, I didn't really get much accomplished. But before you got here, it was like, you got here a little early, but I was on the phone for 3 minutes. And yes, it was a referral, so I'm already in the door, but I know how to move that conversation along. Hey, have you checked these boxes? No? All right, you need to check those boxes. We'll talk at this time tomorrow, and we'll be able to move the transaction forward.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been able to do that or feel confident enough to do that if I wouldn't have got those reps, because I've always tried to be skilled at getting the full picture of everything, but sometimes I was focused on making it perfect before I could move to step 2, or making it perfect before step 3. It's like, no, my wife tells me, like, sometimes she'll be like, quit over explaining. They don't need it all. It's so funny because she's not in real estate at all, but she'll hear me talking and she's like, hey, you should probably do this, because I may be over explaining something where they don't need all 10 steps right now. Let's just get to step 2. And then let's just get to step 3. And as these unravel, they're not even objections at that point, because you already know they're coming. You work them through it and it's on to the next. Instead of, well, I'm going to get you in touch with Gordon and then we're going to bam, 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 bam. It's something I've worked on, but it comes from those reps like you're talking about, because I don't think me and you would be able to move how we do with transactions and with just normal talking with people if we weren't used to that.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting because it's just mental reps, but it's one of those keep going things. Like, I look up and I'm like, oh, I'm 7 years in and I'm better than I was 7 years ago. Like, obviously, but you don't sometimes you don't stop and see like the improvements.
Yeah.
I'm huge on celebrating in the right way, but sometimes you don't see me personally, you don't see like how much you got better at one aspect.
Yeah. When I think about like how some of my conversations went, like the first 3 months that I was a loan officer, I cringe about them now. I mean, some of it was like, I was excited because like I learned what all this stuff meant. And I just remember like, I think probably the first maybe 1 or 2 loan apps that I took, like an in-person app with someone where they came to my office, probably lasted like an hour and a half or 2 hours. Because kind of like what you were saying, I was like, ooh, I know all this stuff. I feel like they need to know everything.
Everything.
So let me explain to you what every single one of these closing cost line items is. And, I talked way too much. And now I think whenever I like finished one of those appointments, I went out to, one of my coworkers and I was pumped up. I was like, that was legit. I just did my first deal. And they were like, don't ever talk that long. Like, that's way too long. And I was
Well, we did an in-person with a referral of mine, my friend's little brother, Mason.
Yeah.
And we did it in like 30 minutes.
Yeah. So again,
That's
by that point,
yeah.
Exactly what you're saying. It's like, I thought I needed to say everything. I didn't have my rhythm figured out. And then, flash forward to, like I'm getting these things, there were points where we'd meet maybe 6 customers in a day, like before COVID. And you just have appointments on the hour every hour. So like
and you wouldn't have been able to do that.
You didn't have time to do that. And so I just try to think about how can I tell them what they need to know efficiently, still take good care of them, still answer their questions, but not spend an hour and a half doing it.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you said, like 20% of what you're going to talk about with them is going to move the needle 80%.
Yeah.
So you're giving them all the absolutely necessary things and then sprinkling in the additional details that are needed.
Yeah.
Instead of just killing them up front. But I do want to shout you out for that because a lot of lenders do it. They meet people in person and over the phone. A lot of stuff is over the phone now. But I love that when I have a client, and Mason and them were young, but they wanted to do it in person.
Yeah.
There's older people. It's not even like age bracket. It's just like a personality type. They want to see it. And that's something you've always accommodated. So I think that's really, really genuine. And obviously you're doing it for the business, but you enjoy taking the time to explain it to someone if that's how they like to get explained to.
Yeah.
But then I send you one, like that one a couple weeks ago where it's going to be a listing here in the future, and you did that all over the phone in like a couple days because they only could give you a little bit each day. But they're good. So it
works for them.
It works for them.
I think another thing that kind of took me a little bit to figure out was like, what does the customer want? If I think they like talking on the phone, or I like talking on the phone because I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But there's certain people that are like, don't call me. Like, just shoot me a text message or just email. Like, that works for me because I'm too busy or whatever.
Or they just don't like talking in general.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, okay, well, what works best for them? Do they want to just email or do they want to come in? So
it's those small questions that help too, because even in my sales process, it's sometimes those simple questions that really set you up for success. Like, what's your preferred contact method? It seems like a robot, but if you say it in a way that you know how to say it, it's actually really beneficial to them because then you're not blowing them up and they're like, man, I told you I don't like getting called.
Yeah.
But they like email, so we only email. Like, I'm more of a texter and a caller, but I've got some clients that only want email and they're so responsive.
Yeah.
They make me polish up on my email responding because I'm like, oh, they really focus on this email.
Yeah.
To where I'm used to just calling someone really quick. So I think that's those small efficiency changes you do over time.
And it's funny because my wife and I are very different. I like she will sometimes she's a texter and I'm a talker. So there's times where if let's just say she was trying to make plans with, I don't know, a friend or a sibling or something like that, and they're just texting back and forth of, well, where are we going to go? And then you wait for them. Well, let's go here. Okay, well, what time? And then you wait for them, and then it's back and forth, and I'm like, dude, just pick up the phone, and you'll figure this out in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But, she's like, it cracks me up because she'll text me something, like a question, and then I'll call her. And I know that her eyes are rolling. She's like, dude, don't call me. just text me or something. But I don't know. I mean, that works for me because I like being on the same page. But I've got clients that are like, kind of like you said, if they want email, they want text or whatnot, it's figuring that out because it's their experience. There's times where even if they're a texter, like we got to pick up the phone, we got a fire, or we've got some issue that we need to
or it's just
out.
a milestone, and it's not really a text milestone.
Yeah,
I've got to explain this to you.
Correct.
And if I text it to you, it's going to be a paragraph.
Yeah,
and you're going to have questions anyway.
Yeah, so some of that's who's your client and what do they like or what works for them, and then some of it's what are you trying to work through. Some of it's simple, yes, no, see you on Friday, and then other times it's like, no, we gotta talk for a couple minutes.
So it was 2015 you moved here.
Yep.
And started the mortgage business.
Yes, summer of 15.
And then so you're almost coming up on 10 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Almost.
Wow. So when you started and you get into it, there's always those struggles, obviously, but what kept you involved in lending? You were just like naturally good at it, so you're like, oh, I'm making more money than I've ever made and I enjoy talking to people, so this works? Or, because I feel like with people I know on the real estate side, that's usually what the MO was, is I found real estate, changed my life, and I was able to change others' lives. So it just seemed like the most rewarding thing to do.
Yeah.
To where, lending, some people may not find that interesting enough for them to do on a daily basis, to where you make it a passion.
Yeah.
So what clicked? You were just good at it, or it sucked for a while, or what?
Well, I think the big thing for me was that even though it's all the same stuff. So it's figuring out, essentially, like if you think about what I do, it's working through credit, income, assets, and debts to like get this loan approved. But everybody's situation is so different to where there's nothing that's just cookie cutter. Yeah, I mean, here and there, like you'll have slam dunk loans where like it's easy to do. It doesn't require a lot of thought, but I'd say most of the customers that we work with, you've got to really like put your thinking hat on and figure out how to make this work. Or they'll have different situations, whether it's with their income or things that show up on the credit report, or like there's always some sort of challenge that comes up or obstacle to work through, to where it's really like mentally stimulating. Like when I worked at the fire department, I felt like I had to work with my body.
Yeah.
I was lugging around hoses, and like it was a physical job. But I think like whenever I'll go home from work now, I'm mentally exhausted because you've got a lot of stuff coming at you, but it's also like thinking through complex situations of how do I pay these debts down to make my debt to income ratios work, or how do I analyze these complicated tax returns when someone owns 20 rental properties and they have 4 businesses. Like it's all income, but and you'll have similar steps of analyzing the income, but it's all different. So I think that's one thing that I've never been complacent in this job, because it's all the same, but it's all so different.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then I think the other part of it is the relationship side of it. So I'm an extrovert. I love being around people.
You've always been like that?
Yeah, I've always been like that. So
I'm like an introvert that loves being around people.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
As I've grown, I've gotten more extroverted, but that's why I wanted to start a podcast, is because I'm so more one-on-one.
Yeah.
But I've been learning to be grouped and it be okay, but I don't think that would have come without real estate. So it's nice to know that you were already like that and then found a job where that's the main thing that happens.
Yeah, and it's not always like I like being in groups, but I like being around people, and getting to know people, and
probably helps you discover more with your clients and with your business relationships because you're genuinely interested.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people will fake that, where like they don't want to be around someone, they don't want to do what they're doing, and a lot of people like will see right through that. But for me, it's like, no, I think going to these events are cool. I think like being in front of someone and helping them do like the biggest financial decision that they're ever going to do is cool. It's rewarding. There's times where if you have a super easy customer, let's just say they're I say slam dunk, where they've got perfect credit, they make too much money, they've got too much money in the bank, like
and they're reasonable.
Correct. Yeah,
like,
and they're reasonable.
Good, easy people.
Yeah, I mean, those are generally the ones where I might forget that customer's name, a couple months down the road, just because we didn't have to work through a lot of stuff. It was we got them to the closing table and it was easy. But there's other times where when you're talking to someone 4 times a day, it's like those customers that you'll never forget. Most of them aren't because they were super pleasant.
Some of the ones I remember, they didn't even close.
Yeah, where it's just, it's struggle, so those aren't always, they're not always fun, but at least like we get to meet some crazy people. Or interesting people, I guess I should say, that have, just unique scenarios. And people will tell you, wild stories that have nothing to do with their loan, but,
And now you got it. Because you spoke to something I deal with is the mental draining part.
Yeah.
Because my wife will be like, I told you to get this from the store. And I'm like, I didn't even remember. Yeah. Because you remember 9 of this person's dogs that they were talking about for 4 hours. So you're like, sometimes you got to delegate your thoughts as far as what's important or what should I just push off, because I'm someone that's genuinely interested, but also has to find that balance of not getting fluffed, where in the past, during my sales process, no matter what type of client it was, sometimes I could get lost in the conversation. And I'm like, what step are we on?
Yeah.
Crap, I just talked to them for 2 hours and I don't know if I got anything.
Yeah.
To where learning and experience, you can navigate that. Like, you're okay talking about the fishing trip, but let's connect the dots.
Yeah, let's reel this back.
And I think that's such a nice way to do it, or there is such a nice way to do it once you're experienced. I feel like in the beginning, I was letting them lead the whole time and then just hoping for a close.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to over control it to where I'm not being myself. And then once I found that balance, things just started to work. And I think also with the genuine curiosity, I stopped caring if, like, I definitely want the deal, but I stopped caring thinking that 1 or 2 decisions of mine were gonna like make or break it. Like, no, I gotta stay on this path and then it has to move to this path so that I can make sure. I feel like being yourself almost gets further. I've noticed on calls that you're talking about the house and then you're talking about them, and then you're just being yourself, and most of the time it's gonna work if it's gonna work. And if it's not gonna work, you were meant to talk to him for something else. I was talking to a guy, because we do it a lot of nationwide on the investing side. I was talking to someone in Northern California, and he's showing me the property. In his case, it looked more of a listing. We referred him to a realtor partner of ours in that area, and they're taking care of it. But I talked to him for 10 or 15 minutes, noticed he had a pool table in his house. We talk about that, and he's my age, but he's played pool his whole life since like 5 years old, and he's legit. So that was what that was for. Like, yes, we got some business out of it because we can refer it out, but that was what it was for. However big or how small. I was able to talk to a cool guy, have a nice conversation. It was only 10 minutes, move the needle for him, and then move on with my day. To where I think in the past, I just got too lost on either side, either trying to micromanage the whole conversation or trying to be too lenient, and this person's just driving you all over the place. I like to find the balance with allowing a driver to drive, because that's how you get them to the closing table, is you guide them while they're driving. But also being okay with the spontaneity of customers. Because like you said, we deal with such interesting folks from such a wide range. I always tell people, I can be in a $5,000 house or a $5 million house in the same day. And those customers can be so different. Yeah. And my dad taught me to just always treat everyone with the same level of respect. When I was younger, I thought he meant treat everyone the same, but it's not that. You can't treat everybody the same because it's not gonna be genuine. Yeah. But treat everyone with the same
level of respect.
Same level of respect.
Yeah.
And he told me that recently when we went on a fishing trip, because a guy we had met that he's friends with, he's like, yeah, that guy's family started Norman. I'm like started Norman? And he's like, yeah, started Norman. And I went back to being a kid when my dad introduced me to my first millionaire, and he barely remembers it. But it was a mentor of his, and he was a millionaire. and I talked to him on his porch. I was like 11 years old, just listening to them. But I always remembered that. I was like, my dad never altered himself. And that's something I pride myself on, because when I started a new home construction, I was trying to alter myself. I was only trying to do the suit and try to talk professionally, try to not say try not to do this, to where once I got free in my eyes, being more on the entrepreneurial side, being myself and treat everybody with that same level of respect and genuine interest, it made me better. And I really appreciate you, because you're one of the first people that taught me how to have that business relationship. Because we're friends. Like, I wouldn't call you just a business relationship, like, oh no, Gordon, lending only, and we leave it at that.
Yeah.
But you were the one that, like, and you probably don't know this, but bridged that gap for me, because I met you through Home Creations as a preferred lender, and I resonated with you when we talked. But then you're like, hey, we should meet for dinner, or we should meet for coffee. And you were one of the first people that kind of jump-started me doing that on a regular basis, even with people I don't really know. So the first time we ever met was is it Gaiutes or Gaiutis? I like Gaiutes. You like Gaiutis?
I'd say Gaiuti. I'm not positive. maybe they can chime in and be like, no, y'all butchered it.
My friend loves the place, and I think he says Gaiutis, but
Okay.
I think Gaiutes. But sometimes I say coyote different.
Okay.
Sometimes I say coyote, sometimes I say coyote. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But we met there for dinner. And then after that, we ended up going to a golf tournament. And it taught me a lot. And when I look back at my life, it's people like yourself that, even though we have a relationship, you don't realize how much you impacted me in those moments. Because of course the business side, we're always improving. But I like to take a step back sometimes and think about not what I get from that relationship, because I'm not in anything to get anything.
Yeah.
But when I look at lessons, I'm like, oh, that's what he taught me.
Yeah.
I remember Jack, rest in peace, Jack. He was at that golf tournament with us. He taught me so much about taking it a little easy. Taking not your foot off the gas. You be as successful as you can be. Work your freaking butt off. Be a good person. But take life in stride. And of course, he's in his 70s, so he has so much more to give me.
Yeah.
But when we were being team meetings, he was the one I sat by, and not because any other reason besides I felt like he was my friend. And being in business is what's taught me that you can meet people at various stages of life. Like he was 74, 75 years old, didn't have to work, but he meant a lot to me in those meetings, and we still benefited each other.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate him because my grandfather's name is Jack. I've got him tattooed on my arm, and they were about the same age. So I felt like it was almost a godsend that when I got into new home sales, I had a protector, someone that looked after me. But it just means a lot to me because you really taught me a lot on that, but also we have a great friendship.
And with Jack, like, I probably told you this, but there was one summer where Jack, David, and one of their friends named Rick, we'd go to Lake Hefner like every...
It was the Thursdays, right?
I think
Twilight?
I want to say it was Thursdays.
He told me about it. He'd be happy. He said, I got my clubs in the car. I'm leaving at 5:30.
Yeah. So we'd get there probably, 6 o'clock or so. We'd finish up with work, and we'd go there for most of a summer. And I think most of the time we probably didn't, like if we had a customer that we were working on together, he'd say, how's it going? Or if I needed to give him an update. But we didn't talk about work. It was like, kind of like what you said. It was, at that point, it was, we're friends, we're drinking beer, and we're playing golf, enjoying like the sunset. And that was good for us. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the coolest things that you can do is really enjoy the people that you work with. That's one of the things that I love about where I work is I love the people who I work with.
Well, and your company, and we should shout it out. It's AMC Mortgage, correct?
Yeah.
I'm working with someone else at AMC right now because I have a listing and the buyer is represented by a lady at AMC.
Okay.
I'd have to look her up on my email.
Yeah.
But same level. I was really impressed because I've only really worked with you. or Kathy or something like that, but same level. I called her the other day and we have to get a second appraisal for a FHA flip rule.
Okay.
And she was like, oh, don't do anything. We'll take care of it. Thanks for calling me and giving me the heads up. I'll handle it now. To where sometimes in various other lenders, you don't get that same level of, not calming, but like sense of security. Like, no, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, like, we got this.
We got it. And I thought of you because I was like, look at that culture. You know, something I talk about with Kevin, the owner of Local Guys, who I've been with for 5 years now. He says, culture is a combination of the conversations you have. And to meet someone, and I just talked to her once on the phone, and then her treating me like you treat me, I'm like, look at that culture there. Because you don't see that everywhere.
It's not everywhere. And so, you know, I think that's one of the things that makes it reassuring. Like, not only the company that I work for, but like when you get to work with agents, you know, realtors or builders who have that same mentality, it's like we align. Like, I know that whether things are smooth, or especially when they're not smooth, like, no one's dropping the ball. I'll give you updates.
And no one's throwing attitude.
Or throwing blame or throwing someone under the bus or whatnot.
I love when you can collaborate.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we all want to get this person, we want to get to the closing table. So someone to buy, someone to sell, you know, and then all this work that we've done to, you know, pay off.
I don't feel like people realize that there's 12 people involved in every real estate transaction. And that's just a random number, but it can be that. It can be the inspector, the appraiser, the termite guy, the lender, the insurance person, the title company, the realtor, the other realtor, the buyer. So it's all these people. And luckily I've been blessed to do such a number of transactions that I feel very experienced at seeing the range. I had one recently where there was blame going, oh boy. There was like 3 people blaming each other from different parties of the transaction. And I was the mediator. I'm always the mediator. But I felt like I was skillfully playing that transaction the right way, where each person I talked to, I gave them the confidence to say what they need to say, but I kept everyone on track. To where there was a blame game going, but I'm just holding the pieces together, and then we get it done. And I think some people get flustered, whether it's an agent or a lender. Some people get attitude. Some people panic. I think it's so much easier when people just have those conversations and just get a solution-based conversation instead of thinking, oh, well, now we got to push closing 2 weeks because of so-and-so. And it's like, yeah, but we're here. Is the buyer good? The seller good? Is title good? Lender good? Let's just go.
Yeah, like sometimes maybe like after closing is the time to point the finger. Like some people, I think that they'd rather focus on what went wrong or who caused it than to fit, like you could be perfectly, you could be right. And some people care more about being right than just getting this thing done. It's like, okay, quit beating a dead horse. Like, yes, this person screwed up, but let's figure out how to make it work, get it done, and then afterwards, like, go vent to somebody.
Well, even when I drop the ball, I'm not perfect, and I just say it. I've never had a moment where I'm hiding that I slipped. It's like, hey, here's what happened.
And people respect that. Like, it's never fun. It's never easy to admit that you screwed up. And I think a lot of people are really scared of doing that because of the reputational damage or just your pride getting the best of you or whatnot. But I've always found that, like, whenever I did screw up and I was completely honest about it, I think that people respect that from you much more than if you tried to blame someone else for it or just not admit it. Because like you said, people screw up. So...
And most of the time, there's nothing you can screw up on that's like that serious to mess up everything. Now, you could slow it down or throw a hurdle or something, but luckily, most of the time, it's not going to cost you the deal. And then when it does, it's a learning lesson, and you move forward, and you don't let it happen again. But it's interesting how the people I gravitate towards the most are the people that take extreme ownership, that set the right standard for themselves, set the right expectations with whoever they're managing in the party, and just are good folks. That's why like when I was saying you helped me on the business relationship side, I feel like it makes me better on when I am creating those relationships.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh no, this person's honest. Sometimes they fail. Like I had someone in a transaction that's an amazing lender. And she was like, hey, I missed one thing. So it's, and it didn't push anything. She's like, hey, I missed one thing, so we're rushing something. She didn't have to say that. She could have done exactly what you're talking about and be like, and they could even just lie.
Yeah.
Someone in my processing team, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then you're just moving down the line. But I think that's what's created good standards for yourself, because I haven't had a bad thing happen when I'm working with you.
Yeah.
And it's just impressive because it started off when we were meeting today with mindset. And I feel like your mindset, your conscience, how you are with folks sets the stage for everything.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people that have been in this real estate game forever and still have like those super ugly traits. And you're like, how do you still make it?
Yeah.
Like, how do you still work? And how do you enjoy it? But that's where I go to balance, because those are the people that probably don't have a good diet, don't have a happy home life, don't have this, and this, where their idea of success or their idea of making it was purely on one side of, the world. Where
Yeah.
It's like only me making X amount per month and I'm good.
Or even if they are still in it, they're not a joy to work with, and everybody knows it. It's like, yeah, this agent's been doing this for 25 years, but she's a jerk, or he's a bulldog, or whatever the case may be. Like I don't want to be known by that. Like I want to be known by like being exceptional at what I do, and like being great with people, and like making the people that I work with feel like they matter most.
That's true.
Because like if you can focus on that, like I don't know, I think that some people will focus on just trying to get this one transaction closed in front of them, and then just on to the next one, and then on to the next one. But it's like if you just take a minute to make sure that like you do a great job for somebody, even if it takes more explaining or more follow-up or more work on your part, like those people don't forget it. And then they're much more likely to, tell other people that they know, hey, you got to work with Zach because like he answered my calls all the time, or he came in on the weekend and did this for me, or he saved me a bunch of money with my negotiation, or whatever the case is. Like I remember there's been a good amount of times where I was helping someone work on their credit. So like when they
And
first
that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and so like whenever they first came in, didn't qualify.
Okay.
But they had spoken to probably like 3 or 4 people before that were like, hey, you don't qualify, have a nice day. And so I took, 15 minutes or so to like go through the credit report with them and say, well, you don't qualify. I mean, that answer was the same, but here's the things that you need to do to be able to qualify maybe 3 months down the road or 6 months down the road or whatnot. And after hearing enough people say like, I just really appreciate that, because no one has ever taken the time to let me know what to do to succeed. It's like, man, like I think I kind of took that for granted, or I underestimated. Like I figured that other people would just do that, and a lot of people are like, no, I don't have time. Like,
No, that's something I love about you is I was about to finish your sentence when you were saying 3 to 6 months, because we've had that conversation with people. Hey, you look like you're about a year out. And then when they stick to it and do it, it makes me so happy. Like, yes, we want a closing, but we're going to get closings because we're high performing.
Yeah.
But when someone's not qualifying and then a year later they qualify, we find something, they bust their tail and they get to the closing table, it's like, I'm really proud of you for doing that.
Yeah, those are the people that are like crying at closing and, make you want to cry, because it's like you help someone achieve something that they never thought was going to be possible. And yeah, it took work and it took time, but it's like that's the stuff that makes me like have fulfillment in my job, or know like I'm truly impacting someone's life. I'm changing the trajectory of their family's life because I cared, and I tried a little bit harder than the next guy. And so it's stories like that where like you don't forget those people. I remember I had some customers like that, and they didn't speak English.
And you speak Spanish.
Yeah, so
We
I
gotta
speak
say
Spanish.
that,
Yeah,
because
so-
I just sent you a Spanish speaking
Okay.
client last week.
Yep.
That one we talked about.
So with these customers, they were I think they were from Venezuela.
Okay.
And I was working with an agent that I've worked with for a long time who's bilingual. And we had to work on credit. We had to work on, it was probably like a 6-month deal to get them to the closing table. But afterwards, they invited all their family. It was like around Christmas time. And so they had like a housewarming party around Christmas time. They called me, they called the realtor, they said, you guys have to come.
Yeah.
And they gave us gifts. We took a shot of tequila together. They made food, and we stayed over their house for probably like 2.5 hours or something like that. And they were just telling their whole family like how impactful it was, like what we did for them. And I'll never forget that he gave me like this salt. It's like a salt lamp, like one of those. It's a salt rock.
Yeah, it's good for you.
Yeah. And so I'll never forget that guy. Mm-hmm. It was hard. It took a lot of work, but it was super impactful to me how much they appreciated that. And not everybody does. I mean, there's times where you bust your butt for folks, and they're pissed because it wasn't enough, or whatever the case may be. But like the ones who,
or they just like, it doesn't even register to grade it as enough or not enough. They're just like, thanks, and move on. Because I've had those where I had a referral from out of town, and he came in. He's like, I'm a coffee guy, but he really wasn't. Because I was like, well, if you're a coffee guy, I got a spot I want to show you. Mm-hmm. We'll have good coffee. We'll talk about the deal, and we'll get it going. And then we get this coffee, and he's like, you've taken me to 2 places, and I'll be honest, I was meaning like diner black coffee. And he was like a humbug about it. And I was like, and I could have let it hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
But I'm so genuine that I said, well, you're not going to get that with me. I said, I'm sorry, we're not drinking, coffee water. We're going to go to nice places, and I'm just going to let you experience something new. And then I remember afterwards, because he was an older guy, his daughter was like, yeah, at first he really wasn't happy that you checked him like that, because I didn't mean it disrespectfully. Yeah. I'm just being honest with him. Well, hey, sir, you want me to pick you up, drive you around the city because you're only flying in for a day to view it property, which was a good experience for me to learn.
Yep.
But I'm going to make the rules on where we stop if you're telling me to make the rules.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because at the end, he really respected it.
Yeah, because you're genuine.
I'm just being myself. It's like, well, yeah, I'm not going to McDonald's because you want a burger. We're going to go to New State. Like, if you want something, we're going to go to something that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
To where I think some people just, it's in all aspects, but some people just don't take the time to be genuinely nice to themselves.
Yeah.
And that's something I could go on forever, but it's interesting because it's mostly the people I've experienced it with are older clients where they could take the time for those things. And I have a lady named Beverly who was a referral of mine, and her husband had passed away, and I helped her. We were teaching each other things where she was like, well, thank you for teaching me that. You're right. I should kind of just enjoy this ride to title because I don't get out of the house. I'm like, yeah, just sit back.
Yeah.
We'll stop, whatever you need to do. To where in the past, I wouldn't be like that. Like, I remember a guy from the north side. It was an investment property, but he had to get driven to county to file documents on the property. He had to get driven to some other insurance place. He had to get driven to closing. And he lived in Edmond, and all this stuff is around here in Midtown. And I would just go pick him up.
Yeah.
And I go back to something when I first got into real estate on the investing side. This guy said, how do you stay on it? And I said, well, when I was in new home sales and now, I stopped treating people like the dollar amount I was going to get from them. Because whether I'm getting $1, 10 grand, 20 grand, if I treat people the same, treat them with the same level of respect, it's going to come back. And I remember 2 guys I was talking to, and one of them was like, you could see it in his eyes, it meant a lot to him. And then the other guy was like, yeah, but you got bills and stuff, right? The second guy I've not seen again. The first guy I've seen multiple times at other real estate things. And it was just me. I mean, at 26 years old or whatever, saying, I just care. And that doesn't mean I want to get ran around, because I'm selective. I'm not gonna. I had someone call me the other day at 7 p.m. and like, hey, can we look at this house at 8? No, we can't. And now, if I would have been in a position where I was here at the office working, maybe that's something we can do because it fits. But at the time, it didn't fit. And then we met a couple days later, and we ended up getting them under contract. So it's being intentional, but also setting boundaries for yourself and treating people well. It goes a long way, to where in the beginning I felt like I told you I was letting them rush me around.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you dealt with on those long talks. But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because me and you have been on this journey together for years now. Because basically when I first started Home Creations is when I met you. So we've known each other like 7 years.
Yeah.
Which is impressive to me. But you've always picked my brain on the investing side, and you've been getting more into that. So I know you were talking to me on the phone, but I really wanted to save it for this so I could ask questions.
Okay.
You said you've been on the hard money side now, even with your mortgage broker or mortgage lending company you're with?
Yeah, so I've gotten into private lending.
Private lending.
Yeah, so I'm still doing my normal.
Which, for someone that doesn't know what private lending is, how would you explain that to someone?
So I think the easiest way to say is like there's many different types of loans to get. But government loans, like the more common loan types that you hear about, conventional FAVA, they have a certain set of guidelines that you have to follow to be able to qualify for those loans. And so there's a lot of folks who it makes sense to lend them, to make a loan to them, but they don't fit inside that box. So like self-employed people, for example, if you have just started a business 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, and you're making good money and you want to buy a house, you haven't probably don't have enough filed tax returns to qualify for a conventional loan, because we might need to see like 2 years of filed tax returns.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So in those instances, they've still got good credit, they've got a good down payment and things like that. They just don't fit inside this conventional box. So
most lenders would just be like moving them on. You don't qualify.
Well, correct, because if you want to make this loan, you have to meet these guidelines, and if you don't meet those guidelines, we can't do it.
Okay.
So there was a bunch of those opportunities over the years where you just couldn't help people, but it made sense. You're like, man, this is just wild. Like, it makes sense to loan to this person, but we can't. So there was 2 guys that I work with up in Tulsa who have gotten into private lending over the years. One's done them for, I think, about 3 years, and one about 8 years. And so over the years, I've kind of picked their brain about that and kind of how they got into it, what they do, and things like that. And so whenever you have those customers, now I have this opportunity to say, well, I can't make you a conventional loan, but I have this other alternative.
Yeah.
And so the qualifying criteria or the underwriting criteria is a lot more flexible, but it does still need to make sense. So we're not necessarily into I've never paid a bill and I've got a 400 credit score, but I want to buy a house and I can't get a loan. It doesn't make sense to do this loan. But for those that make sense, but you can't make it work on paper, we've got this alternative to still be able to help someone. And let's just say whether it's a year or 2 down the road, once they've had their business long enough and they can qualify for a conventional loan, they'll just refi back to a conventional loan. Or another instance is folks that maximize their deductions, which you have the option to do when you're self-employed. So you make money, you're just not showing much of a profit or enough of a profit on paper to qualify for this loan.
Yeah.
So let's just say, after a couple of years, you start showing the profit that you need to, or that you actually have, you could refinance. So some folks will have this on this type of private funding. They'll have it on the books for a short period of time, and then others, they might have it for 5-10 years.
They're okay with it.
Yeah, they're okay with it. So I just think it's a good thing to be able to provide another option, because sometimes, I guess previously it was, if you can do this type of financing, call Gordon. But if I couldn't do it, I'd say, well, I can't help you, try calling this person. But now it's like, well, I could do both of those. I'm still going to try to get them a normal conventional loan, because financially it'll make a little bit more sense for them. Those terms are a little bit more favorable, but in the instance that that doesn't work, we've still got something to offer him to be able to get him in the house and take good care of him.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people, like you said, that go through that. I had a friend that I grew up with. I helped her buy a house, and you helped. But we had to get her to another company to do an interest-only loan for a year before you could come in and save the day on a refinance.
Yep.
But now it's staying under the same umbrella, and people like dealing with you so much that it's going to make that transition even better. And it'll give you another niche in the market where people that are self-employed, like you said, make good money, have good credit score, but have it listed as whatever it is, it just gives you an opportunity to monetize those more. And that's something we've always been huge on. Is when I started, I was a realtor and a wholesaler, and that was it. But then I got into creative finance, or then I got into other ways to invest, whether it be like subject to and lease options and all these other things, to where you can look at a property with 7 or 8 different options. And if it didn't qualify for any of those, then you're surprised, because it's going to at least qualify for something.
Yeah.
Or you can connect them with the right person to make it work. And I don't know if all lenders, as far as, what would you say, traditional lenders, as far as like AMC and places like that, is more of a traditional lender, but to grow with the times, that's huge. Because now those people can come to you and work on something where in the past we've had to tell people that it wouldn't work. Now that's years ago. We've been a lot more creative in the last few years, but before that, it was a lot tougher. So on the private side, that's definitely something good for the self-employed. Something I think that'll really speak to my investment style listeners is that you can close subject to. And you explained that to me on the phone, but what are some differences or some hurdles that, you know, someone may be going through if they're going that route, like the subject to route?
Yeah, so on the subject to, kind of how that works from the lending perspective is, if you've got someone who's selling their home subject to, but they want to go ahead and buy a new home, the documents,
which is, sorry to interrupt you, which is usually the huge, or the biggest objection. Most sellers, that's their biggest objection, is, well, I can't do subject to, which is, you know, subject to the existing mortgage, where you get those same details as far as interest rate and things. They don't want to do that because they want to buy another house. But I don't know if people realize that you can do it.
Well, you can. It's just not with a typical, you know, conventional or FHA loan, because when you do subject to, they're still financially responsible for that payment, for that mortgage payment, you know, that a different lender is, or their investor is essentially like assuming or taking over on their behalf. So even though they're not making the payment, they're not released from that obligation. So if they want to turn around and buy a new house, and we look at their monthly debts and stuff like that, we've got to qualify them on the new house payment and this existing house payment, even though someone else is paying it on their behalf. So for some folks, like if they qualify for both house payments, then we move on down the road. But in the event that they're not able to, that's another example where you don't qualify for conventional loan now because of your debt to income ratios. I know someone else is making this payment, but because you don't fit inside this box, we can't make this loan. So now that's another instance where I could do this private financing where it makes sense to make this loan to you. And so we'll go ahead and do it, let you get into this home, and then move on down the road. So,
because I've had experiences where some lenders have said they can view it as cash flow for the person, to where it's not affecting their debt to income.
Well, some, yes. I've heard of some lenders that will, after 12 months of having someone make this payment, they'll be able to exclude that. But
which may be an example of when they can do a private financing for a year, go get something, and refinance in a year once that 12 months or whatever qualifications are needed.
Yeah, so if that were the case, then again, we don't need to have this private loan on the books for 15 years, 20 years. It could be a temporary strategy to help them still get into the home that they need, build equity, pay down the loan, and then whenever they're ready to refinance down the road, then they can do that.
Do you experience those? Have you got some of those recently or anything? Or
well, I mean, some of them are going to be short-term in nature. Some of them are going to be longer-term in nature. It just kind of depends on what the customer's wanting to do, you know. So, we see it all.
What's a good example of? So sometimes On the investing side, you're usually going private money or something like that if you're gonna get a fix and flip, or you want to fund your rehab, those type of things. For a general consumer, someone that's trying to buy a fixer upper to actually live in it, what are some, and I might be using the wrong terminology, but what are some construction style loans or some type of loans where someone could buy a property with funding that rehab for them to live in it? Because I've seen, I can't remember the name, but it was like a certain FHA loan that can buy it and have money for rehab. Are there loans like that you've had experience in?
There are. So I used to do both of those before COVID. So FHA had, it's called a 203K.
That's what it is.
Yeah, so it's FHA's
I'm doing one of
version
those right now.
of a renovation loan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a conventional version of that as well, where you'd buy the home that needs work and you'd put down your 3.5% or your 5%.
Well, that's a good deal.
And then you'd also finance the funds or finance the cost of renovating the property.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say, it's a $100,000 home, but it needs a ton of work. You need to put, I don't know, $40,000 into it.
Mm-hmm.
You're financing the 100 plus the 40 and put 3.5% down on all of that. And so a lot of those programs kind of went away during COVID. There was a lot less investors that were offering that type of financing. So there are still some.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of any like here in the metro. So if you know of someone, then
Well, I had a listing in Chandler that was a fixer-upper,
okay.
And people are reaching out to me on that FHA 203K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that there are still some, whether it's a bank or a mortgage company,
Mm-hmm.
or there's some lenders that are still doing them, but far fewer than there were prior to COVID, just because there aren't many investors that are offering that type of financing.
Okay.
So this would be again another solution, to that, where you can purchase the property, do the renovation, and then you want to hold on to it
refinance.
Then you refi down the road.
Okay.
So it has many different applications.
Okay. So instead of someone feeling like they don't have an option, whether it's on the investing side where you're looking to gain fix and flips or rentals or whatever it is, for the normal consumer, that's how they can benefit from it. They can partner with you and basically fund the project, live in the house, and now they've got built-in equity and a good loan at that point once they refinance after X amount of months or year or whatever it may be.
Exactly.
That's cool. So what do you think? I know that's been the biggest thing we've talked about on the phone, because that's the cool thing about us is we'll just randomly catch up and there's some business and then there's just some life.
Yeah.
I'll be like, man, how do you smoke a brisket? And you're like, well, you got to do this, and this, which I have one in the freezer. So I'm going to go that route, and I'll bug you about it. But what is something else you're working on? Is the private financing, is that the newest shiny object that you're working on right now and mastering, or is there something else that's coming that you want to share?
That's the big thing now.
Okay.
I recently started that, and it's been a pretty cool journey, like starting your own business.
Okay.
There, as far as the process of creating your LLC, and then me getting all this funding set up, and then starting to market it, making, just setting up your process and things, has been a learning curve. It's been kind of, a little intimidating because you don't always know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of like you, where whenever I talk about this, I want to have everything figured out. But sometimes you don't know what else you need to do. It's like, well, just do this next thing. So make my LLC, get approved with Secretary of State, get bank approval, funding approval, set up your email address, just simple things like that.
Because you can't get stuck in that paralysis.
Correct.
That's even the reason I just ripped the Band-Aid off for the podcast is it's just God and the universe like telling me to do it, because so many people are randomly reaching out to me about it. Not just like to be a guest or nothing, but people will be like, oh, by the way, you should do this. Yeah. And then I was like, man, I love creating those relationships. Screw it. I'm going to just rip the Band-Aid off and do it. And then already, even just starting recording, I feel like reinvigorated kind of.
Yeah.
And it's not like you met me here and I'm like, yep, Gordon pays me $1,000 to do this. Like, no, my cousin said it best. He said it's a passion project.
Yeah.
And it's cool when you can have a business aspect do that, or you can have something else do that. It's just that reinventing yourself. And I think that's something really cool about you, because you could get stuck in that traditional box. Be like, I do FHA, conventional, VA, 700 credit scores and up, X amount of dollars and up. Anyone else, send them to somebody else.
Yeah.
To where you actually take the time. So we have those 3, 6 month to a year clients, but we have those slam dunks. Now we've got this other whole option.
Yeah.
So I think it's inspiring to see someone continue to improve themselves.
To keep going.
Yeah, to keep going. Because people tell me that something they're doing, I'm like, man, wow, like that's motivating. And in my beginning years of real estate, I felt like I was more on the envious side. I've never been a hater. I've always loved to see people's success, but I was like in a comparison mindset in the beginning because it was so hard.
Yeah.
But as I've grown and you can just look at that as pure motivation, then it's really cool. So like whether it's Tez or any of my friends in the investing realm, or like my friend Sydney that does comedy, when I see him do comedy, especially because I do public speaking and I know how hard it is, I'm like, man, that's inspiring. You just go up there and eat shit. Like, but he's a killer now. But I saw in the beginning when it was a struggle. And then
But that's how you and I work.
Yes. I wish you would have heard some of my calls. It's like, this is Zach and like just all this wasted space.
Yeah.
To where now the seller's doing 70% of the talking, 80% of the talking. You're analyzing, providing reassurance, and providing solutions to those problems where I don't think everyone's like that, whether it's a lender or anything. They don't always take the time to understand first before responding. Where in my personal life and business life, I've been guilty of just reacting. And the more I don't do that, the better outcomes are. So it's interesting to grow, I guess. I still feel like a big kid in the world, just with no supervision, just living.
Yeah.
But you really are, a person, a man, learning your role.
Yeah.
And it's something that inspires me, especially with you being a husband, being a father, being an entrepreneur, and then just always wanting to get better. Because you could get stagnant. And I just really appreciate you coming on here because people need to see that side of you.
Yeah.
And you do a good job of giving it to folks. But I almost feel spoiled with the relationships I have, that I can call someone like you that's a high level performing person and we can talk about brisket to closing thousands of dollars worth of deals.
Yeah.
In the same conversation. Or I have a funny video on my phone and I love it. And you're driving the golf cart and I'm talking shit to you and then you hit something in the ground and you're like, oh shit. And you're just like swerving. But then also if we would have had to pull over and call a client, we could have given them the best service in the world right then.
Yeah.
So I love meeting people that can be themselves in their business to where when you're starting out or when you've been in it so long you're complacent, you're not yourself. You're not your best version of yourself. My friend Sydney, I went in his office and he made it so personal to him, it makes me laugh. I'm like, you really got a picture of you dressed as Cameron for Halloween on your desk? And he's like, yeah, they love it here. And I'm like, that's cool. Like when I see pictures of you and you got sombrero on because you're at a Cinco de Mayo, like that's cool. I talked to that lady from AMC and she's like, I love Gordon. We got to hang out at this event and I didn't know he was that fun. I was like, yeah, he's pretty cool. Like it's interesting to get behind the curtain.
Yeah.
So I want to give you an opportunity to say anything you feel like you want to say, but also plug like your social media, your business and all of that, just so people can reach you.
Yeah. Well, I just appreciate this. It's, I'd never done a podcast before.
It's your first one?
Yeah. I've never done it. So I kind of didn't know what to expect. But like once when you're not worried about, there's no script.
No.
Like we didn't say like, hey, we're going to talk about this. We just started talking.
No, you started talking. I said, hey, throw the mic on.
Yeah. And so it's that much more comfortable when you're not worried about, should I talk about this or should I talk about that? You're just talking, about life that we've done together, about business that we've done together. Like when you're talking about yourself and stuff that it's so much easier. You don't have to, like, you're not faking that.
No.
You're not trying to memorize that. It is what it is.
Yes, sir.
So, I appreciate this. Like I'm excited for you, to do this podcast. to see where this goes. But when you talk about like the growth that we've had over the years, like I remember, back when both of us were much younger, just trying to figure out our businesses, and now we're, I don't know, 7 or so years older, still figuring out new stuff. You're figuring out this podcast, I'm figuring out my business, but we're still doing it. Like, that's fun. And I hope that, like, to anybody listening, like, I hope that you never get to the point where you stop wanting to do stuff like that. Like, stop doing new challenges or learning new things and whatnot. It's I've always thought that it's just cool learning new stuff. I still want to be 80 years old doing new stuff for the first time, or trying new restaurants, or laughing about stupid jokes and stuff like that. Like, it keeps life a lot easier and more fun whenever you don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
And you're challenging yourself, because you never know what opportunity is going to be there that you might miss out on if you're not comfortable enough to to just do it.
Yeah, I love sucking at things.
Yeah.
It seems like something you wouldn't want to like say.
Yeah.
But I love trying something I've never played or done with people that know how to do it.
Yeah.
Like, my friend called me randomly to go play in a soccer league on a random day. I was like, hell yeah. I've played a little soccer, but not a lot. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And we had to switch teams because we had too many people and the other people didn't show up. So that kicked me off because I'm the referral,
Yeah.
They're going to push me to the other team, which is fine. It was me and 4 or 5 Hispanic dudes, one young one, and then the other 4 were like older guys. They knew how to play soccer. They know the ins and outs. It's like you servicing a loan. You know the ins and outs. And I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Like, I like that they're guiding me. I like that I can suck at something and learn something in the same instant. So it speaks volumes to your character, because it's not only in your business life, but your personal life too.
Yeah. But I'm excited to, listen and see the people that you bring on, and, just to watch you kind of grow from this. And I guess the other thing that I'll say is, there's been a couple times where you've said, like, Gordon, you had this sort of impact on me. Like, most of that I didn't know.
Yeah,
like, I'm hearing some of that for the first time, of like, which is that's cool to hear. I think that, sometimes, especially as guys, like, we probably don't like tell other people like the impact that they've had on you.
Yes.
But like, as another, as your friend, but another dude, like, that's cool to hear.
Yeah.
To see like I guess it's some of the things that I might take for granted of,
Yeah.
hey, I'm just going to go to dinner or go have drinks, or, go have coffee or whatnot with a buddy, and we'll see what happens. Like, to know that made an impact on how you view business, or how you, whatever the case may be. Like, that's, maybe we shouldn't pass on opportunities to tell people, when they do impact us.
Yeah, and that's something. First off, I appreciate you saying that, because it means a lot to me. Because I told you, in the last year or so, I've had a real mindset shift, and I really enjoy giving people their flowers, but I'm like extremely excited to do it now, and I've been doing it with people in the real world. I mean, when I run into them, but it happened on my last episode, and it's happening on this one. Both of you all said, I don't know, I didn't know that. And it's not because I kept it from you, it's just I've grown, I've matured so much in what I consider life and love, that I can think of those things, and I can pinpoint something that someone did for me.
Yeah.
And that means a lot to me. As I've grown, I've just dug deep on those things, because I've realized what actually means something to me. Of course, the business side, I want to be as successful as possible. But on the life side, I've just been so much happier with the little things. And not only did you teach me how to have genuine business relationships, but that turned into me feeling more comfortable doing public speaking, or that made me more comfortable going to a networking event, because I can just be myself. And I think we get lucky sometimes to meet someone that's a friend that you can go through those trial periods with, where we met 4 or 5 times or more, but there's no pressure.
Yeah.
So then when I meet someone for the first time and I may have had pressure, there's no pressure. And that's really an inspiration of this podcast is I met with some folks and that conversation was so impactful that I felt like this isn't just for me because I'll forget but even you re-listening to it, but imagine your wife listening to you or your daughters or a family member or a friend or someone at work or anything like that. They get a whole different perspective of you that you may not, it's not that you may not give it to them, just me and you react to each other differently.
Yep.
Me and you have a genuine relationship where this is how we are every time we talk. So I think it's cool to share.
Yeah.
But I want you to plug your social media too and your company or whatever you need to.
Yeah. So I guess all my do you post contact info when you post these will it have it there?
Yep, I'm gonna put it in the bottom as far as your social media, and I can put your website or whatever. But I just want people to know who you are, and I know I didn't really introduce you at the beginning, but you're Gordon Chandler, someone that means a ton to me. But I just wanted to make sure that you got anything out you needed to.
Yeah. So again, I'm with AMC Mortgage, and then my private funding is Live Oak Funding. So I'll have all that contact info. So if it's anything mortgage related, I'm always happy to go through that and help, figure out what the best option is for someone, whether I can do it or not. And so, anytime someone has questions about a loan, I'm happy to go over that and take good care of them.
Awesome, man. Well, last thing for you then, you kind of went over it, but I did want to briefly touch base on it. Something I want to have as a recurring theme is, your keep going moment that helps you push through.
Yeah.
Would you say yours is really when you made that jump in 9 months to where you moved to Oklahoma, started the company, had 2 kids, your wife? Or is that something that was a keep going moment for you, or where do you think you had to dig deep and really put your feet on the ground?
Man, I feel like I've had a lot of keep going moments. I feel like that was, a big one just because so many different big life moments happened, so many different ones of changing, buying a house, changing careers, moving states, having a baby, stuff like that. That was a lot, but I've had those in my marriage. I've had those as a father. I've had those whenever I've had challenges in work, during COVID. That was anybody in real estate for sure had if you're still in it, you had a keep going moment of being like, man, this is so stressful. This is so negative. I'm not sure what real estate is going to look like a couple months from now to whenever you kept your nose down and stayed focused. The folks that are still in it, it's because they didn't quit. So, training for my marathon, recovering from some surgeries that I've had, there's just been a lot of things where it's real difficult. But one thing that I'll say, I'll do a plug for my wife. She last year she finished her undergrad at UCO.
Okay. And
so whenever they did an interview, they interviewed her and published this story in a magazine for the university. And I think one of the things that she talked about a lot was Chandler's never quit. So when we think about a family motto or something, that's something that we have instilled in our girls.
Okay.
And so I thought it was really cool because she sent that to me, I think 2 weeks ago whenever they republished it.
Yeah.
Because, they just had graduation. So I read it and that just stuck out to me of this thing that we talked about of Chandler's never quit. I want my girls to think about that.
That culture.
But you think about, keep going. Same thing.
Yeah.
A little bit different way to say it, but
Same mentality.
when school gets hard or when, going to college gets tough or your relationship gets tough or, whatever the case may be, you're wanting to start a business and it's hard and you don't always know, there's uncertainty.
Yeah.
I just think that if someone can adapt their version of keep going or don't quit or, go one more, whatever the case is, I feel like those are the people that no matter what they're doing, they're going to succeed. You could be in real estate, you can be an artist, you could be a musician, But no matter what, I think if you have the mentality that you're gonna keep going, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how uncertain it is, like you can't be unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Like you can't not succeed.
Yeah.
But it all starts with your mentality. So I think it's cool that we talk so much about that, but it's I think your mentality just really will shape the direction that your life is going to go.
Man, I appreciate you so much.
Now this is good.
Thank you. We're out.
We're out.